The selling part of this film is the crabs. That's what the movie should have revolved around. But the movie doesn't revolve around the crabs. It
Yeah.
revolves around the actual guy. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm kind of getting to the point where the only conflicts I can take seriously are internal ones, because those are the ones that can actually have more than one possible outcome. It's pretty much guaranteed that they get to the submarine in time and that they are not all eaten by crabs, right? It's very unlikely that the movie will actually do any of those things. And so there's no real tension there. Like, the actual tension comes from a character having to choose between two things, and they can only choose one. Because if they choose one, that rules out the other. So in other words, an internal conflict. And I'm kind of at this point now, if a movie doesn't have an internal conflict, I don't care anymore, because it's almost guaranteed how that will turn out. Just a random guy showing up with a knife. Yes, that scene is suspenseful, but that's also kind of it. Like, there's nothing else going on where somebody has to make a choice or decision or a trade-off or has to choose between two things, whatever. Like, those are the things that create interesting characters. And those things are free. Like, those things are not more expensive to film. So if you have a low budget, you just do that. Create a setup where somebody has to choose between two things. Like, both children are sick and the mother only has medicine for one. That's a dilemma. And then you make a story. Like, it doesn't have to be this, right? But that would be a way to create a dilemma, right? You want to save both children. You only have enough medicine for one. And under normal circumstances, you would just go to a hospital, but now you can't. Now you have to choose. That's a story, right? I'm just some guy, right? Who talks about movies, right? I'm not a writer. This is not my career, right? I don't have 20 years of experience. But why can I come up with this and they can't? And my idea is cheaper to film, because the CGI crabs probably cost tens of thousands of euros.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
so what's
weird.
the problem?
Yeah, I don't get how professionals can write a script. It seems like this was at least the first or second draft, or maybe the writers wrote it and then the director just completely just took certain scenes out and said, yeah, I just don't know, it doesn't make sense.
I feel like the fundamental part as well, which they were kind of like missing, was from the title itself. Like, the title of the movie is called Survive, and it's like, okay, for these people that are in this situation, what are they willing to do to survive? How do they survive? Like, there's like loads of different questions you can ask about something like being in the survival situations. And like Daniel was mentioning about like difficult decisions that you'd have to make in those scenarios. And it's like none of that really comes up. Like, the example of like the crew that they run into from like the containers, like, you got to play that differently in terms of they come across them after they've been attacked by the crabs, and they kind of like maybe like welcome them in to kind of start off with, but they understand the threat a little bit more than the family does, so that when the next kind of like wave of attacks come in, they are a little bit more ruthless in terms of like how they deal with it, in terms of like trying to lock themselves in the container. And you can have a situation where, again, like, the families kind of come to not trust, but, you know, kind of like familiarize themselves with this crew, but then the crew instantly turns on them to kind of like save their own back, essentially. And it's a question on like, you know, people willing to do in like cases of survival and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I don't know, loads of like questions and loads of sort of like cases that are just not really asked in this movie. And again, like Daniel mentioned, it's not about like low budget. It's about just better writing and like trying to just like rework a few things in the script, or rework how things play out, and just like rework a few lines just to sort of kind of really drive home the whole like purpose of what the movie is meant to be.